Welcome back, YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. Today it's time to review Enderal. Enderal is the biggest mod for Skyrim ever. It's basically total conversion, and that means a complete game based on the Skyrim assets. And the Sure AI team has added a lot of their own stuff into this. There's been hours and hours spent on this game, and the biggest question is if the team has succeeded. Now, for the most part, yes. They've done a tremendous job in creating a beautiful, diverse, and dangerous world. A world that's on the brink of destruction, and that's where you come in. Now, this might sound as your typical, well, you're the Dragonborn and you need to save the world type of story, but contrary to Skyrim's story, the story of Enderal is actually deep and very much grounded or inspired by modern day issues like religion versus fate and life and death and war and peace. Now, it's slow burning at the beginning, but it gets better and better along the way. Now, what's remarkable is that the main characters that you'll meet are really well fleshed out. You'll see them a lot in this game. So there's a lot of exposition about who they are, what they do, and they also tell a lot about their history. Something that's really missing in Skyrim. They will accompany you instead of just follow you like a slave as the companions in Skyrim. Now, every quest has a backstory, and quest givers are usually personally motivated. So no simple fetch quests here. And some of them are really funny. The locations that you'll visit in the game are very well crafted. I mean, the level design or the dungeon design is just phenomenal. It's really professionally done. The interiors are well decorated. There are multi-layered dungeons, ruins, castles, and it all has that handcrafted feel to it. It's really a far cry from the bare bones locations in Skyrim. That's the previous total conversion for Oblivion from the same team. Now, special mention for the incredible classical score of Enderal. Every location seems to have its own wonderful musical piece. For instance, listen to this. Now, is it all great in Enderal? Well, not all of it's great, and I'm just going to share some thoughts with you on the stuff that I did not really like that much. I think it's still good, don't get me wrong, but there were things that I enjoyed less, right? Okay, so here's a small example. Look at the table. There's food there, but you can't pick it up. You can only sit on the table. You can't pick up this food, which will help you refill your health bar. So you can't pick it up. It's just decorum. It breaks the immersion, I think. Also, some of the locations don't have any quests related to them, so I found myself sort of in doubt whether I should explore a location or just wait until I got a quest for it. So, and yes, I mean, locations do have a backstory, and there are sort of notes lying about that tell you a lot about the actual location. There are a lot of books to be found that give a lot of. There's a lot of lore in this game, but some locations just feel like the mod team, just couldn't come up with a quest idea, or they didn't have time to create a quest around a certain location, or they just abandoned a certain idea, as there are things in the world that seem to be interactive but aren't really. Also, I would have liked to see that there was more interaction, more dialogue with NPCs, and I mean the enemies in this game, but really there's not. So it seems like this game has a lot of loose ends here and there. When I go into a dungeon and I clear a dungeon, and at the end of the dungeon there is this sort of boss there, right? But you can't interact, you can't talk to the boss just to know what the whole thing is about. You can't, there's no choice in whether or not to make the boss stand down. It's all about combat, right? And it's the Skyrim combat, and the Skyrim combat is not that great. But I mean, this is not a criticism towards the Enderal team in no way. But the fighting is just not the biggest or the best thing about Skyrim. So, and it isn't in Enderal as well. So let's talk about enemies. Well, you know, enemies are the familiar ones from Skyrim. So you'll be fighting most of the time these bandits and skeletons and beasts like spiders and wolves and bears. And that becomes a bit old after, I mean, 20 hours of gameplay. And there is just not a lot of variety in enemies. Also, the difficulty really ramps up after you've sort of unlocked new areas. So each area seems to be more difficult than the last one, which feels a bit superficial, as you still be fighting the same enemies, only tougher ones, in essence, without giving you any clues, visual clues, that you're dealing with higher level enemies. So what I mean by that is that in the starting area you'll be meeting very easy skeletons, right? But as you go, you'll still meet skeletons that are really tough, but you can't see the difference between these varieties of skeletons, actually. Now, you can loot a lot of stuff in this game, and there are lots of armors lying around, and swords and all that. That's really, really cool. I really liked it. There are specific armor sets you can collect that give you a certain buff in your stats. There are also a lot of chests lying around throughout Enderal, but usually the contents of these chests are just sort of disappointing, because you'll only find a couple of gold pieces usually and some materials, and with these materials you can craft items. If you have a blueprint for a certain sword, for instance, and you have the materials, you can craft a sword. I'm not really the crafting type. I don't like crafting that much, but if you like that sort of stuff, there's a lot of that in this game. I think really Enderal really wants you to craft stuff, but I just don't do it because usually there isn't a point to it. I mean, why should I craft a sword that I will find later on in the game somewhere lying around in the dungeon? So it makes no sense to me. Leveling works a bit different in Enderal than in Skyrim. As you kill enemies and finish quests, you'll get XP, right? That's the normal thing, what happens usually. But once you level up, you can only raise the health bar, basically, the mana bar, and the stamina bar. So these three things, individual stats like one-handed swords, two-handed swords, ranged combat, and all that, can only be improved by buying certain skill books. And reading these skill books, or just clicking on them, will raise your stats with 1 or 2 points. Now, I do understand what the team was going for here, because in real life, if you want to learn a skill, you usually have to read about it. But in Enderal, this system feels artificial, and I really prefer the more organic system of Skyrim, where you sort of raise your stats as you're doing things in the world. So if you use a lot of magic, you get better at using magic. Or if you use a lot of swords, then you raise that stats. There are 3 different skill trees. They're basically divided between sort of a thief, fish character, a magic character, and a warrior character. These are basically these 3 sort of pedestals that you can use to raise your stats even more. Again, I find this a bit unnatural, right? There are 3 things you can do here. You can raise your health bar separately, and then you raise your individual stats, and then there's still buffs you can choose in the skill trees. And all these things, they seem to be separated from one another. It doesn't seem to be a sort of a organic, natural thing of how leveling works in this game. I hope I make some sense here, but it's difficult to explain. Now, what about the technical side of things? Well, you know, it's still Skyrim, and Skyrim is not known for its stability, especially when you mod the game. But in Enderal, I experienced a lot of crashes to desktop, and that just, again, that breaks the immersion. I found it kind of strange, actually, because I'm running Enderal on a completely clean install of Skyrim, so I'm not sure why these crashes keep happening to me. It's not like it's not too irritating because it's occasionally that this happens, but still, I just didn't like that. Also, there are some bugs and glitches where certain object there you should be able to interact with, or won't interact with at some point won't interact. So you need to again exit the game, load a save game, and then you can continue. Like for instance, if there's a door you can open, you should be able to open, like a door for a shop, and it won't open for you. Or the road signs at the side of the road won't activate, so you cannot choose between the different parts of the main city. Also, sometimes the dialogue does not kick in at the right moment as you sort of interact with a certain character to progress the story. Again, this is all not game breaking, but it's just annoying. It really is. Now still, the team releases patches on a regular basis, which makes things better, so it could be that all these things will be ironed out in the future. So as it stands, as a fan-created total conversion of Skyrim, Enderal is really well crafted. It's really a testament of what people that come together who have this passion can create, and it's as good or even better sometimes. It's certain, you know, especially the story and the characters and the exposition, it's better than Skyrim. So this team needs to get a budget to create their own game. Maybe Bethesda should hire them and work together on separate games, really, because these people are highly talented. So yes, this is a very good game, Enderal. It comes highly recommended. It's not perfect, but it's really good. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think.